Happy Thursday, June 13th, everyone. Welcome back to Weather on the Go. All your weather coverage. Next Thursday is the start of summer, as we do have one more week left of spring. And you can see in today's video, we're going to be talking about more rounds of severe weather and extreme heat building across the eastern United States. And at the end of the video, we're going to be talking about something brewing up in the tropics in the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche as well. So if you are new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you covered with daily weather forecast videos right here covering southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics. Be sure to press the like button, the thumbs up button if you like today's weather forecast after the video. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below as well. We'll get to those later on today. This morning, temperatures were very mild across the middle of the country from the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys and further west here of the Mississippi River. We saw temperatures starting off in the low and middle 70s, and you can see where that ridge of high pressure is anchored here as of today across portions of New Mexico, down into West Texas here, into southern portions of Colorado, and some of that heat will be extending further to the east toward the middle and lower Mississippi Valley as we turn into the day on Friday, June 14th. So this afternoon, high temperatures are well into the 90s, if not the triple digits across portions of the central and southern U.S., with a lot of areas, especially there for Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, into those 90s, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and much of the southeastern states into the 90s as well. And when you factor in what the air actually feels like to the body out there, here's your heat index values this afternoon from the middle and upper 90s in west central Illinois into the triple digits, back into places like Kansas City up to 107 this afternoon, 112 back here toward the Topeka region this afternoon. And as we go into Friday, there's going to be a frontal boundary moving further south, so the heat will relax a little bit for the Central Plains, especially for Kansas, but you can see more 90s further south into Oklahoma, Texas, and near the Gulf Coast there through Dixie Alley and the southeast coast, and those heat index values south of that boundary will again be pushing into the triple digits tomorrow afternoon. We are monitoring some severe weather across portions of the Great Lakes, Midwest, and Central Plains this afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma does have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather from west central Illinois into southeast Iowa and northern Missouri, so from around the Kansas City area up toward the Davenport Quad Cities region in Iowa, and then east-southeastward toward Peoria and Springfield, Illinois. We do have a level 2 out of 5 in the yellow, a slight risk of severe weather from Grand Rapids, Detroit, back through Chicago there, Fort Wayne, Indiana, back through St. Louis there into Wichita, Topeka, and then even extending further west from there toward the Front Range into eastern Colorado. The main concern from these storms will obviously be very large hail with the initial supercells. We could be seeing hailstones 2 to 3 inches in diameter. That's up to baseball size here in this area where you see dash shaded lines outlined in black from the Chicagoland area back through Davenport Quad Cities, back here into Kansas City, Topeka, and near the Des Moines region. And then we could see that also, that very same area, seeing the potential for winds up to 80 miles per hour, really along and south of the I-80 corridor there in Illinois, Iowa, and then south of that into Missouri, and then extending back there into Kansas. And we cannot rule out a few tornadoes. We have a 2% chance in the green and a 5% chance of tornadoes in the brown shaded color here. The highest tornado threat in that tri-state area there of southeast Iowa, western Illinois, and northeastern Missouri. Look at all the instability, the thunderstorm fuel we have today. We have a lot of that in the purples and whites, grays up here. That's around 4,000, 5,000 joules per kilogram up across portions of the Midwest. So plenty of thunderstorm fuel. You feel that as you walk out the door with all the heat and humidity out there. That's your thunderstorm fuel. So as we go into the afternoon, isolated to scattered supercells starting up here near the Illinois-Wisconsin state line back into northeastern Iowa. Those will grow upscale into a big line of storms across the Kansas City area, into northern Missouri and central Illinois, and then back here into northern Indiana toward the Detroit area. And all of these storms will be capable of becoming severe with significant damaging winds to 80 miles per hour along the leading edge of this line, some 2 to 3 inch diameter hail, and maybe a few spin-up tornadoes here. The tornado threat, though, I do want to note, is pretty low today as we could become more linear with that line of storms. the tornado threat will go down. And then as we go into early Friday morning, those storms really weaken as they move into that ridge of high pressure. It's basically like a brick wall, and it'll start to fall apart as it moves toward the Ohio River Valley. As we go into Friday, we have more severe weather in a couple of areas. We have a slight risk over here into the Front Range in northeastern Colorado, into portions of the plains, Nebraska and Kansas, with that slight risk of severe weather there in yellow. We have another slight risk across the northeast mid-Atlantic as well, from Boston down through New York City and even into northern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania near the Poconos region. We definitely have a potential for severe weather there. It does include all risks, damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. So here's the radar depiction Friday afternoon. We got scattered storms near the I-95 corridor, so Boston, Hartford, down to New York City here, and then back in toward the Poconos there in southeastern Pennsylvania. We could start to see some scattered severe storms. More storms firing off from the Front Range of the Rockies out into the plains, especially for Nebraska and into Kansas Friday afternoon. A big mesoscale convective system. It's just a complex of storms bowing out here. So the wind threat is going to be the highest across Nebraska and Kansas tomorrow. Wouldn't be shocked if we saw winds up to 80 miles per hour out here either as we go into Friday evening. And then as those storms move north and east into that ridge of high pressure, it'll again be like a brick wall, and they will start to fall apart early Saturday morning. Here are your rainfall totals between now and Friday night. Here you can see the heaviest rains on the northern periphery of all that heat, right? We have all the heat down across the south and central U.S. We're not going to have a drop of rain. Well, we have that heat down there to the north of that heat, the northern periphery. That's what we call the ring of fire pattern. That is where we have more of those storm clusters moving across portions of the Corn Belt there into the Ohio Valley and then into the Northeast. And we're still monitoring some heavy rainfall in southern Florida for the Fort Myers area, Naples, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, even down into the Daytona Beach area. We've had a lot of pictures and videos being sent in across social media of a major flooding down across this region. That will likely continue to worsen as we go through the next few days, as additional rain will be incoming. As we go into Father's Day weekend here, Saturday, June 15th and Father's Day, Sunday, June 16th, you can see we have almost two high pressure systems. The main high pressure across the southeast is really going to be hitting us hard with heat out here, and then we're going to see heat building across Mexico up into West Texas with a secondary high pressure system. And then notice the little dip here in the jet stream across the Pacific Northwest into the Canadian prairies for the weekend. That is a low pressure storm track where we're going to have a lot of cooler weather further to the north. So here is Saturday afternoon. Here are your high temperatures. Yes, you guessed it. Under the high pressure, we're back into the 90s, and looking here at the heat index, back into the triple digits for areas of the middle, lower Mississippi Valley through the southeast coast. And then as we go into Sunday, some of that 90-degree heat will start to work further north into the Midwest here. 95 in Des Moines, 91 in Chicago, and 86 up there into Milwaukee there, and even Green Bay. So we're going to start to see a lot more heat further north, and triple-digit heat index readings on Sunday, Father's Day. 102 in Des Moines, 100 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and 101 in Springfield there into Illinois, 96 in Chicago, and 90 for a heat index there in Milwaukee on the lakefront Father's Day afternoon. And looking at precipitation trends through the Father's Day weekend time frame, on Saturday there will be a storm cluster somewhere back here into Nebraska, South Dakota, and western Iowa. That will be tracking northeastward across Minnesota, especially through the state of Iowa there, and far northern Wisconsin as we go into Saturday night closer toward Lake Superior. I think areas further south in southern Wisconsin into eastern Iowa, much of Illinois and the Ohio Valley will largely stay dry on Saturday because we have the heat building further north. There's actually a strong cap on the atmosphere here, which is basically you have warm air at the surface and you have warm air aloft, and when you have that, you can't get a lot of cloud cover to form, so we may have just some clouds around, but probably not as much precipitation. And then as we go into Sunday, Father's Day, you're going to see more of that thunderstorm activity crossing over into the upper peninsula there in Michigan, northern Wisconsin, and northern lower Michigan, and into southeastern Canada here. Look at the Canadian prairies up here. That's where the active jet stream will be, and underneath where all the heat is, we're just not going to have a lot of rainfall at all. So Father's Day weekend here on Saturday, June 15th, Father's Day Sunday, June 16th. You can see where the heaviest rainfall corridor will be. First and foremost, the Canadian prairies up here from Alberta into Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Western Ontario, Canada. We're going to see some decent rains. Couple clusters up here into North Dakota as well, and then the main cluster from Iowa, Minnesota, into northern Wisconsin, where we could see rainfall amounts over 1 and 2 inches. Southern Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, and northern Illinois. We have that cap on the atmosphere while we could have a few showers or an isolated spotty thunderstorm on Saturday or Sunday. These areas will largely be dry, and I do think just cloud cover will rule the roost across this region for Father's Day weekend. So going into next week, it's all about the heat, folks, across the eastern United States, trough out west. So you guessed it, we have heat further across the east here. So we're going to see a big pattern handoff as we go into next week, where we have the heat right now out west. That will shift east, and the cooler air will be out west. So we're going to see a nice reprieve from that heat across portions of Montana, down here into Idaho, into Nevada, and much of the Pacific Northwest, even for California, seeing near normal temperatures there through next week. Let's look at early next week's temperatures. Yes, the Ohio Valley, middle and upper 90s, even a triple-digit high near Cincinnati, a 101 will be possible early next week. And then look at the heat expanding, not only stopping in the United States, but southeastern Canada, Ontario, Quebec here into eastern Canada could be seeing temperatures up into the low 90s. For the middle of next week, we have a frontal boundary back here. Behind that, we'll see showers and storms in the Dakotas, into Nebraska there, and northern portions of Minnesota, cooling off our temperatures with that rain-cooled air. And then that frontal boundary later next week will get hung up somewhere across the Midwest, a Great Lakes region. Where that sets up exactly is very uncertain, but to the south of that boundary, it's into the 90s and triple digits we go. To the north of that boundary, more spring-like air with temperatures into the 70s and low 80s. There is probably where the more active weather will be next week, from the Dakotas into Nebraska, into Minnesota, especially into northern and central Wisconsin, and then on up into Ontario and Quebec, Canada. Here we definitely have that more active jet stream. That ring of fire pattern continues. See all the brown down here across the east and southeast? Yeah, that's because the high pressure is going to be expanding and intensifying next week, and we're just not going to see a lot of rain, if any at all. And you can see how much rain we could be expecting, especially most of the state of Minnesota. With these oranges and reds showing up, we could see at least 2, 3, even 4 inches or more of rainfall there across portions of Minnesota and even far northern Wisconsin as we go into next week. Now looking over at the tropics, the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, with their tropical weather outlook, does have a 40% chance of development here in the Bay of Campeche and southwestern Gulf of Mexico as we go over the next 7 days. The Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche is very warm out here with the sea surface temperatures. Here's your sea surface temperature anomalies, well above normal, folks. We're seeing 2, even 3 degrees or Celsius above normal here across this region. So watching down here, we have a Central American gyre starting to develop here as we go into Monday. As we go into Wednesday, the middle of next week, we have that low pressure system starting to develop a little bit further north into the Bay of Campeche. Now it's over the open water, so that means the low pressure system will likely strengthen. And a week from today, which is also the start of astronomical summer, that's where we do have that low pressure system moving in toward the east coast of Mexico. And how long it is over the water, the residence time over the water, will mean a lot in how strong this system gets. Right now, this model in particular has a 989 millibar low, which would be a tropical depression or a weaker tropical storm. And you can see the probabilities here through next Thursday on June 20th. You can see the probabilities essentially certain of a tropical depression in the Bay of Campeche, and then even potentially some medium chances of a weaker tropical storm into the Bay of Campeche and the east coast of Mexico, a 40 to 50% chance of a tropical storm there. And we're really not looking at a hurricane, but we'll keep you updated on that. It won't have a long enough time over the warm water to develop into a hurricane, most likely, but again, we'll keep you covered on that. And now looking also at the eastern Pacific side, that's what we do on this channel as well, and you can see 20% chance of development just to the south of the Mexican coast there and west of Central America. That is where we see potentially another system developing over the next 7 days, and we'll keep you covered on that. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. We'll have another video out for you tomorrow. If you like today's weather forecast, give it a thumbs up down below. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those later on today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Thursday out there.